So this field here, and the question is whether or not this material, these straight lines that you see happening here, why do they happen like that? That wasn't taught in geology class. So the question that I have is, were these little mountains or whatever they are, were they carved down and erosion corroded it down to this level? Or is it something else? I was thinking to myself about this white stuff everywhere. Now he's talking about this footprint. I do want to try to let you see that, but we can go through and look at this white stuff. You see it at the top of the mountains, and you have to ask yourself what that stuff could be. I showed almost 4 years ago, like 3 years ago, this stuff in South Africa, these tracks. Well, what could those tracks be going through? Randall Carlson is the man. You know, he knows this stuff already. He's just not telling us. He's holding it back. He's holding it back. Let's talk about this white stuff. Now, this is not necessarily white, so it doesn't have to be white. But what is this stuff? Okay, here, look at this picture here. There's some straight lines going on, right? You've got some type of megalithic track, and the foundation of this track is these. Look at that. It just seems to like it was dumped in there, and it was that stuff. That stuff was put in there, right? That stuff came last. That stuff wasn't first. What is that stuff? Is that first or second? The green area, obviously we don't have to count the grass, but that's the first layer. And you see these, what I consider unnatural lines, and especially the cutting one, and you've got these channels, and you've got these bridges. And to me, this looks just like one of these channel bridges. But maybe they're not bridges. Maybe they're just OB dumping. Maybe it's the same stuff as this. Now, we know that Robert Schoch doesn't believe this stuff is unnatural. And that would mean, and what's the argument here? Well, what are we stepping in? What would a footprint like that step in? What is that white stuff that Michael Tellinger talked about? Here we have these ancient and prehistoric footprints. It's in the North American desert. But in South Africa, we've got this same white stuff, you know. So what is it? Well, I'll just say it. It's a byproduct of something. Originally, I thought these were ancient plateaus that were carved down. But now I'm thinking maybe this white stuff was actually a byproduct of the mining activity. And you can see it. What do you get? You get footprints in the mud. You get tracks going through the mud too, depending on the activities, right? And these ancient tracks could be the footprint of the, there's several guesses, right? Ancient aliens, giants. I doubt that's human. I doubt that's human. When you look at the how big this is, and I'm sorry that always pops up. We don't really have a legend anyways, but I've shown all this before. We've got these straight lines going. We've got tracks in Malta. We've got tracks, if you check out the New Earth channel, tracks everywhere. Ancient tracks. Those were small tracks compared to these. These are big tracks. And you've got bridges, this stuff crossing over. Here's what I consider to be the try 1, 2, 3, I believe. One. Look at that line. You've got the line, right? It goes through, but then you've got the mining activity, and then the ancient tracks going next to the mining activity, creating triangles. You've got 1, 2, 3 little amphitheaters created by something. You're going to say that's a natural erosive? You've got that track going right down the cliff right there, right down the edge. This is in South Africa. And most of what I'm showing you is, and look at that, inside there's a house. That little white speck. This stuff is big. It's really big. And we've got our ancient shortcuts. I mean, that shortcut is kind of not really a shortcut if you look at it. It's almost like you're almost going to do more work. It's not very smooth. But why is it, to begin with, why is it there? These tracks, these ancient tracks going through this stuff that's at the top of these plateaus. I used to think it was natural stuff, but now I'm thinking maybe this stuff was used to create structures. OB dumping. And now I've even learned something new just tonight that actually backs this up even more. I'll save it for the last part. Okay, see this? Look at that big old white plateau. And then you've got a track going right through the middle. Is it possible that this white plateau was added later? What is it? Well, let's listen to... I wanted to take a look at Michael Tellinger's video. I already... by the way, I was checking into giants. An ancient human has been found twice in the Carthaginian... maybe that was the Bible, or maybe that was something separate from the Bible. I still haven't researched it. 36 feet is the tallest giant that we have some type of evidence of, some type of report. Or look at that stuff. And why is that stuff moving like a river? Well, maybe this answers the question. Maybe I'm about to answer the question. Look at that track. And this type of OB dumping right here, this type of, you think that's a mountain? I don't. This stuff, it looks like something imprinted right there. It doesn't look like it was a erosion. It looks like a footprint. It looks like this stuff was used to build lots of weird structures. Lots of different things. And also when you go across it and a track forms, you've got this gap. This stuff creates... I mean, are those ancient plateaus? I always thought this was an ancient plateau and that the stuff on top of it was natural. But now I'm thinking that that stuff on top might have been laid out first or later. I'm not sure. In the mining process, we've got something called mining slurry. It's a type of a trailing. And actually, I just found out even something more exciting about this. And it might even explain a lot of different things about these tracks right here. Now this thing is more of a... I don't know what created those roads, if it's this white stuff or not. Like we have this gap, it just goes right through. And nothing grows on this stuff. I mean, it might get a little bit of cover of dirt and then something grows on it, but it seems like the stuff itself can't really support plants. This looks similar to some of those nodes we see along the paths. This is along one path. It's not showing in this picture, because I've shown this before. Go to my previous videos. But maybe that's actually created from the chef's frosting bag, where he uses it to just create walls with this stuff, this byproduct. And is this stuff actually put on top of ancient terraforming? That means the terraforming is older than the stuff.
Now, anyone that studies mainstream geology or archaeology will immediately think, well, how is it possible? You can't leave a footprint in igneous rock. Granite is an igneous rock. It's pushed up over millions of years out of the ground. It's hot and boiling and blah, 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 and you can't leave a footprint in it. Well, those would be the people that haven't done their research. They don't have enough information to figure out why you could leave a footprint in this kind of rock. Because what seems to us as rock may not actually be rock. When you take granite, you crush it up, you extract the gold, extract the metals, extract the material, and you leave it lying around in its wet, cement, concrete-like state, it becomes hard again. It becomes a granite and a solid mass again. I've had beautiful information shared with me by a Canadian gold miner in the Canadian Rockies that claims exactly this kind of thing. It says when they leave the gold mining activity behind in autumn and they leave for winter and leave behind these piles of wet cement concrete like slurry, and when they come back after winter they find footprints of bears and birds and other animals in what they left behind. And now those footprints have become hard. They are in the granite that looks like rock. If anybody finds those, they'd be wondering, how is it possible for bears and deer and birds to leave footprints in the granite? Because it wasn't a solid rock granite to start off with. It was originally a processed material like concrete out of which they extracted the gold. And that is the common denominator here. We have ancient gold mines, we have stories of Anunnaki and giants, the way we have in the Bible and the Sumerian texts, and we have the common denominator called gold mining. I've shared with you already the incredible amount of stories on the gold, how much gold has been mined in southern Africa in the last 120 years. And now we start looking at how much gold has been mined here in the last 100 and 200 and 300,000 years. This giant footprint is a very, very sober reminder that there is a history here, an unwritten history that we know nothing about, and this footprint needs to be cherished and investigated. And we need to investigate this rock to see how much gold is in this rock, or if the gold has been extracted. From my understanding, this granite is reasonably rich in gold, and this is why they wanted to come and mine this for gold and possibly other minerals. So the next step here is to take samples of this and have it analyzed to see how much gold is in here and other minerals in there. And if it is a processed material, if it is granite, or if it is a material that's already been crushed and rehardened. One final thing on this. In one of our lectures, while I was talking about the giant footprint, a guy put up his hand and said he works in the glue, in the epoxy business. That's what he does. He's an epoxy chemist. And granite powder is an active ingredient in epoxy glue that helps the glue to become hard. And there we have another important ingredient. So, welcome to the giant footprint. Share this with the rest of the world. This is one of the great ancient sites that should be seen by those who are interested in this part of human history. Thank you very much.
Check it out yourself. He's Michael Tellinger, of course, and he is doing several videos on this. But I heard that and I'm like, man, he put it spot on, nailed it. Could these mountains here be the product of some type of overburden dumping that was going on? Or, I mean, that's big. Those are mountains, okay? But they really don't make sense to me, nor do these parallel curved mountains. Could they be overdumping of some ancient kind? And could these peaks also be? I mean, those are the same mountains right there. So this little one has a flat, and they're just in the middle of nowhere, and they just, what's that, a volcano did that? Not the way that looks. That doesn't look volcanic. It looks conical. Not like a volcano conical. And then you've got what's going on in Tibesti, and that's very vast. Were these structures carved down to from a plateau? I don't think so. I think that they were actually the same overburden dumping stuff, this stuff that I've been talking about the whole time. Here's a modern day mine in South Africa, and next to it, or not next, but nearby, actually that's in South Africa. This is in Lesotho. What did they use these things for? Were they mines? They don't look like mines. They look like they were some type of a pit for gold, where you put the slurry right in there and let it separate and let it sit. So you've got this stuff, and this is the next big news. This is the craziest thing right here. I was doing a little research using the chat GPT, and it said a slurry. Well, I said, what's slurry? I didn't even say what. I said, what is slag? Because I kind of got confused. And I asked the original question, what type of mine tailings are there? And it said there's two main types, dry and wet. I'm like, wet, yeah. Dry tailings are generated from air separation processes and are usually deposited in piles or embankments. Piles, dry. Okay, wet are generated from wet separation processes and are typically deposited in the form of a slurry in tailings ponds or dams. In tailings, ponds or dams. Okay, it depends on the type of mining. But what did I say next? What is slag? Slag is metal smelting, so it's not really related to mining. But there are some similarities with slag. It's a byproduct. Slurry, though. Now, slurry was the term that you heard Michael Tellinger use. And it was maybe the first time I heard it, because I was thinking to myself, look at what that footprint's in, whether it's real or fake. I believe it's... do I believe it's real? I'm not going to say I'd bet my life it's real, but what I would say is there's other footprints, and that looks like the best form of a footprint to me. Some of these other ones look fake. And it's because of the slurry that it's in. And he did a great explanation, and I had to grab that and I just said screw it. I'm just gonna play it because it's. If I even got a copyright, I'd be privileged to get a copyright strike from Michael Tellinger. However, I don't think he's the type of person that would do that, especially under these circumstances. A slurry is a mixture of solid and a liquid, usually in the form of a suspension of fine particles in a liquid medium. Okay, whoa, it's mud, right? Well, how about mud that contains gold? Because these are used in industrial processes such as mining, construction, food processing, and chemical production. Let's get back to mining. In mining, and by the way, I don't know, maybe it knew I was talking about mining. I don't think it finished. It says, in mining, slurry is often used to transport minerals. Okay, so this white stuff possibly could be used to transport. Now, let's take a look at this picture right here. So let's say they were transporting it, and then it became a plateau. So now we've got these lines cut in it. Why? Maybe some later miners were using that because there's valuable stuff in that slurry. So that's why it looks like it's been mined and quarried a little bit. But this line looks like it's part of the whole mining thing. That actually looks like part of the tracks of the gutters, and they're all going through this stuff. That stuff in Utah, and then I'll finish this up. But look at that, what ChatGPT just said. This stuff was used to transport. What are these channels for? Why did they have a channel there? Was that the transport channel? Were the tracks on both sides of this channel the actual transport track? And here you see the roads. Were there vehicles that drove down and created these tracks? And they created these gutters from all this activity? Or were they like one big vehicle that made that track? Or was it actually just a wheel of an either even larger vehicle that made that track? You know, the thing is that I kind of tend to see only single lines. Look at that track. That looks like, I used to call these canals, but maybe it's just a track, a giant track. These ridges, I can't explain them. They turn into gutters, and they go and turn into ridges again. They go through this stuff. You guys, thank you for your support. There's Utah. In fact, these so-called needles are supposed to be natural. Now, maybe some of this was created with that stuff, and then it got mined later. So you have both sides. You've got old stuff, and then you've got even older stuff. This byproduct, it's concrete. These dikes in Colorado, could those be walls made of this stuff? Could they be walls that were created to move and transport the gold from the Colorado Spanish peaks? Are these walls, or are they transport devices to move the slurry down the mountain? Maybe they were rivers of molten slurry. And you have to ask yourself, were they up here? This is what I consider overburden dumping in the Sahara Desert. This is coming from the Spanish peaks. And this stuff is all over. Look at this one. This one's interesting because you've got the stuff, and then you've got the lines going through the stuff, and then you got this mound on top that looks like something was added later on top of all that previous activity. So which is older, this mound or all this so-called erosion, which I don't believe it is? Look at this line. This is up in the Sahara Desert, and you've got this line going under the 1,000-foot tall sand dunes that are like thousands of years old, I think. I mean, if we consider, first, this place was green and lush, and then you've got these lines going underneath. Were they walls? I don't know, but look, you've got a little structure right up against the wall. And maybe those walls are made of this stuff. These little things, I mean, there's a bunch of them here. This looks like it's all that stuff. This is Utah, and you're seeing the lines go parallel through the stuff. So maybe the stuff, and this looks old too. If you get in there, it looks like you see this stuff on top, but you see an older layer underneath. So you think maybe the stuff was put there first, and then it got quarried or mined, and then it eroded. That's a long time. So it's kind of hard for me to understand which came first. This is Algeria. So I look at these roads that I've found in the Sahara, and they seem like they're going through some kind of foundation of stuff, like a byproduct. So maybe this is also signs of ancient mining. I didn't really think that. Now these so-called volcanic dikes coming down from the mountains, these are in the USA, I think. Got to double check that, but I believe that's US. Here's a plateau. You can see the lines underneath it, and then you got this other mound of matter that's a totally different color, right? In fact, purple plus beige turns into turquoise. It looks like it's eroding slowly and changing the color and mixing, but it's not the same stuff. This is South America. This is actually in Argentina. And these arcs, these ridges come from the mountains. There's another one over here. You see those others two over here, and you see this one, and there's more on the other side of this great plateau. They were collecting stuff. These dribble mountains, if you look at the road, the fact that the road carves through it means that the bottom layer, the beige, was there first, and then the stuff was just put on top and dripped. I call those dribbles. That's a dribble. And that's what I think about that matrix picture. Here, this is Spanish Peaks again, east and west, and you've got these so-called volcanic dikes, but they're going all over and crisscrossing each other. That doesn't seem right. Have you ever seen a volcanic dike go up and over the other side? Okay, I was standing over there, and I say that actually this looks like it dropped down and stopped, but it does look like it bulges up a little bit. So this is the Twin Peaks up in Colorado, and you've got these geologists call them volcanic dikes. I want to know what happened before Atlantis, and I think that we should take a close look at what we can see in South Africa. Michael Tellinger was talking about this footprint. The footprints in this stuff, this byproduct, this mining, possibly mud byproduct. And he was talking about taking gold. Well, there's a lot of gold up here in the Spanish Peaks. So if you got the gold up here, and these lines are maybe, I just showed you that it was a possibility to use slurry as a transport device. So if these tracks, and I don't know what's going on with the crisscrosses, but these volcanic dikes, I don't know why they're crisscrossed. They look like they're unnaturally placed. And that means intelligently placed. Well, who put them there? Humans? I've kind of come to the conclusion that whatever happened here in North America was a long time ago, like maybe 100,000 or a million years ago. It's intriguing. And the fact that I think that they had a machine that put these down, these volcanic dikes. I think they're just walls, or I would be surprised if they were a transport device for slurry. But slurry is the topic of this video today. Yeah, North America seems a lot older. I think that this was overburden dumping of some ancient mining project. Because what you see is those lines underneath, I think it's like this was overburden dumping put there after the lines were created. These lines coming from the mountains, I know those look pretty natural, but they match these other lines. I'm going back to Utah. That's Utah. That's Utah. And these needles, these so-called needles, I went over there. I drove over there and I said, I got to figure out the mainstream explanation for this stuff. So I went to Utah. It was freezing. And I just want to show you this one picture because I got it from the sign that was out there, the needles. And they're trying to say this stuff broke up in parallel lines. Well, if you want to take just a quick look at this other picture that I put, which is here, you'll see that a lot of these so-called ancient quarrying lines that I've found, they're not parallel in the regard, they're parallel to the direction, right? That's going up and down. But these parallel lines are going in this direction, and then you've got a third set of parallel lines there. You've got three sets. You got the, let's say north-south, let's say east-west, and then what's this one? That's a third one.